The contractions were getting stronger, each wave of pain more intense than the last. I gripped the hospital bed rails, trying to focus on my breathing, but my mother-in-law Victoria's voice cut through my concentration like a knife. "Sign these papers now, Emma," she demanded, waving the document in front of my face. "You're not worthy of my son, and you know it. My name is Emma Chen, and at 26 I was about to give birth to my first child, while my husband's family tried to force me to sign divorce papers. James, my husband of 2 years, wasn't even here. He was away on business according to his mother, though I knew better." Another contraction hit, and I bit back a scream. Through tear-filled eyes, I saw Victoria's satisfied smirk. She thought my pain made me vulnerable, weak. She had no idea how strong I'd become. "Where's James?" I managed to ask between breaths. "He should be here. My son is where he needs to be," Victoria snapped, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the divorce papers. "With someone more suitable, someone from our social circle, someone worthy of the Harrison name." The Harrison family, old money, older prejudices, they'd never accepted me, the daughter of immigrant small business owners. To them, I was a gold digger who'd trapped their precious son with a pregnancy. "Mrs. Harrison," my voice was steady, despite the pain. "I'm about to give birth to your grandchild. Is this really the time?" Her laugh was cold, calculated. "Grandchild? We'll see about that. Sign these papers, and we'll make sure you're comfortable. Far away from our family, of course. Refuse and you'll never see this baby." I closed my eyes, remembering the day 3 months ago, when I'd first suspected something was wrong. James had become distant, always working late, always too busy for doctor's appointments. Then I found the messages on his phone, messages to someone named Olivia, filled with promises and plans for their future together. That same day, I'd contacted a private investigator, and my lawyer. I wasn't going to be blindsided, not when I had a child to protect. "Time is running out, Emma." Victoria's voice dripped with false concern. "The nurses won't let you into delivery without proper family present, and right now, I'm all you've got." She was bluffing. I knew my rights as a patient, but I also knew the Harrisons' influence in this hospital, which bore their family name. Money talked, and they had plenty of it. Another contraction ripped through me, stronger this time. The monitor beside my bed beeped frantically. "Fine," I gasped, reaching for the papers. Victoria's eyes lit up with triumph as she handed me a pen. Her designer heels clicked against the hospital floor as she moved closer, eager to witness her victory. What she didn't notice was my other hand, pressing the nurse call button repeatedly. As I scribbled on the papers, the door burst open. "Mrs. Chen," a nurse rushed in, followed by my doctor. "Your contractions are too close together. We need to move you to delivery now." Victoria tried to intervene. "She's not finished signing. Out, doctor." Patterson's voice left no room for argument. "Family only during transfer." "I am family," Victoria protested, waving the half-signed papers. Dr. Patterson glanced at the documents, then at my distressed state. Her eyes hardened. "Security," she called out the door. "Please escort Mrs. Harrison to the waiting area." As they wheeled me out, I heard Victoria's outraged protests fade down the hallway. Through the haze of pain, I smiled. The papers I'd signed, not divorce papers at all. I'd scrawled under duress across every page. Hours later, as I held my beautiful baby girl in my arms, I thought about the DNA test results safely stored in my lawyer's office. The test I'd had done secretly during my last checkup, when I'd finally confirmed my suspicions about James's frequent business trips. Victoria burst into my room the next morning, divorce papers clutched in her manicured hands. "You think you're clever, don't you? Invalidating the signatures. It doesn't matter. James is filing for divorce anyway, and we'll make sure he gets full custody." I looked down at my daughter, sleeping peacefully in my arms. She had my eyes, my nose, and thankfully none of James's features. "You really should have asked James where he was 3 months into my pregnancy," I said quietly, "when he was supposedly at that conference in Chicago." Victoria's face faltered for a moment. "What are you talking about?" "James was in Bali," I continued, my voice steady, "with Olivia. I have proof, photos, hotel receipts, everything, and something else too." I reached for my phone, pulled up a calendar app. "Count back 9 months, Victoria. Your son was in another country when this baby was conceived." The color drained from her face as she did the math. "That's impossible, you're lying. The DNA test will prove it," I said, gently rocking my daughter. "Your son isn't the father. The man I was seeing after I discovered James's affair is a man who actually wants to be part of his daughter's life. Victoria staggered backward, gripping the door frame for support. You can keep your precious Harrison name, I told her. Your son can marry his Olivia. But you should know, I've already filed for divorce, and my lawyer has all the evidence of James's infidelity, including when it started. The prenup your family insisted on. The infidelity clause works both ways. She fled the room, designer heels clicking frantically down the hallway. I held my daughter closer, kissing her forehead softly. It's just you and me now, little one, I whispered. Well, us and your real daddy. He can't wait to meet you. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael, my actual baby's father, the kind, successful doctor I'd met during one of James's many absences, the man who'd supported me through everything once he learned the truth. How are my girls doing? His message read. I smiled, taking a photo of our sleeping daughter to send him. The Harrisons thought they were destroying me, but they'd actually set me free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. And as I lay there, holding the future in my arms, I knew the real show was just beginning. Victoria and James had no idea what was coming next. The next few days in the hospital were a blur of visitors, but not the ones Victoria Harrison had expected. Instead of the usual parade of society wives coming to welcome another Harrison heir, my room was filled with lawyers, documenting everything that had happened during labor. They really tried to force you to sign divorce papers during active labor. My lawyer Diana shook her head in disbelief as she reviewed the security footage from the hospital. The judge is going to love this. I cradled my daughter Sophie while watching the video play out. Victoria's threatening behavior was clear even without audio. Will it help our case? Help it, Diana laughed. Emma, they handed us a gift. Attempting to coerce a woman in labor to sign legal documents. That's not just unethical, it's criminal harassment. The door opened, and Michael slipped in, still in his doctor's scrubs from his shift in the cardiology department. His face lit up at the sight of Sophie, just as it had every time he'd visited since her birth. There's my little princess, he whispered, gently taking her from my arms. Unlike James, who'd never once attended a prenatal appointment, Michael had been there for everything since we'd discovered the pregnancy was his. The irony wasn't lost on me. James had cheated because he claimed I was too focused on having a baby instead of his needs. Meanwhile, he'd been in Bali with Olivia when his affair had given me the greatest gift, the chance to meet Michael during a routine checkup. The Harrisons are trying to spin this, Diana said, scrolling through her phone. They're claiming you trapped James, then cheated on him. They want to paint you as the villain, before we file our countersuit. I thought about the careful documentation I'd kept, James's credit card statements showing hotel charges in Bali, when he was supposedly in Chicago, the photos my private investigator had obtained, the timeline of his affair with Olivia, that had started just months into our marriage. Let them try, I said, watching Michael rock our daughter. The truth has a way of coming out. That evening, as if on cue, Victoria launched her first attack. Local society blogs suddenly carried stories about the gold-digging wife, who'd betrayed the Harrison family trust. Anonymous sources claimed I'd orchestrated everything to steal the family fortune. James finally showed his face, giving an interview to a sympathetic journalist about how devastating it was to discover his wife's infidelity. He played the part of wounded husband perfectly, until Diana leaked the first photo. James and Olivia, canoodling on a beach in Bali 9 months before Sophie's birth. The timestamp was clear, the geotag undeniable. Within hours, the story started shifting. They're scrambling, Diana reported, showing me the cease and desist letters from the Harrisons' lawyers. They want us to stop releasing evidence before the divorce proceedings. What about the DNA test? I asked, feeding Sophie while Michael dozed in the hospital chair beside us. He'd worked a double shift, but refused to go home, wanting to spend every possible moment with us. We're holding that card until the perfect moment, Diana smiled. Right now, they think they can still control the narrative. Let them keep thinking that. Victoria's next move was to threaten my parents' business. She didn't realize they'd already sold their restaurant chain months ago, after I'd warned them what was coming. The Harrisons' attempts at economic pressure fell flat. Your mother stopped by the hospital today, Michael said one evening, about a week after Sophie's birth. She tried to convince the nurses she had visitation rights as the grandmother. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Did she see the security photos we gave to hospital administration? Better, Michael grinned. She ran into my mother, you know, the hospital board member. That was an interesting conversation. While the Harrisons had been focused on their social standing, they'd forgotten to research Michael. His family had founded this hospital 3 generations ago. Victoria's precious Harrison name meant nothing compared to the respect Michael's family commanded in medical circles. The final blow came when Olivia, tired of being the secret mistress, decided to tell her side of the story. Her interview detailed a 3-year affair, longer than my entire marriage to James. She had emails, videos, promises of divorce dating back to our honeymoon. Your ex-husband's girlfriend has quite a lot to say, Diana said, dropping a thick folder on my hospital table. She's particularly interested in the trust fund James promised her, the one filled with money he'd been siphoning from your joint accounts. I looked at Michael, peacefully holding our daughter, and felt nothing but gratitude for James's betrayal. It had led me here, to real love, to a beautiful daughter, to a future built on truth rather than social expectations. Should we show them the DNA test now? I asked Diana. She shook her head, a predatory smile crossing her face. Not yet, let them keep thinking they have a claim to your daughter. The higher they build their house of cards, the harder it falls, I finished, watching Sophie sleep in her father's arms. The real father who'd loved her from the moment he knew she existed. The Harrisons had no idea what was coming next. They thought they were destroying my life, but they were actually destroying themselves. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people's true nature come to light. And as I watched Michael with our daughter, I knew we had all the time in the world to let that light shine. The divorce proceedings were set for a crisp autumn morning, 3 months after Sophie's birth. I walked into the courthouse with Michael and Diana, our daughter sleeping peacefully in her carrier. The Harrisons were already there, looking like they'd stepped out of a society magazine. James in his tailored suit, Victoria in her designer dress, their lawyers flanking them like expensive bodyguards. Remember, Diana whispered, let them make their move first. James couldn't help smirking when he saw me. He probably thought I looked vulnerable, sleep-deprived from caring for a newborn. He had no idea I'd never felt stronger. The hearing began with their side presenting their case. James played his part perfectly, the devoted husband betrayed by an unfaithful wife. Victoria dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief as he described discovering my affair, and the pain of knowing the baby wasn't his. We're requesting full custody, their lawyer announced. Mr. Harrison is prepared to raise this child as his own, despite the circumstances of her conception. That's when Diana stood up, her heels clicking against the courtroom floor. Your Honor, before we proceed, we have evidence that will significantly impact these proceedings. She presented the first bomb, photos of James and Olivia spanning 3 years, including during the time Sophie was conceived. The timestamp on a particularly intimate beach photo in Bali was highlighted in red. James's face went pale. Victoria stopped her theatrical crying. Furthermore, Diana continued, we have documentation of Mr. Harrison's systematic financial fraud against my client, including the misappropriation of joint funds to support his extramarital relationship. The judge leaned forward, examining the financial records. Each transaction was highlighted, showing how James had been funneling money to accounts shared with Olivia. And finally, Diana said, pulling out one last envelope, we have the results of a DNA test conducted during Mrs. Chen's pregnancy and confirmed after birth. The courtroom went silent. Victoria gripped James's arm so tight, her knuckles went white. The test conclusively proves that Mr. Harrison is not the biological father of Sophie Chen, Diana stated. Dr. Michael Bradford is, and he's here today to formally acknowledge paternity. Michael stood up beside me, and for the first time, the Harrisons seemed to really look at him. Recognition dawned on Victoria's face as she finally placed where she'd seen him before. His family's name was on the wing of their precious hospital. This is preposterous, Victoria sputtered. She's trying to steal from us, Mrs. Harrison. The judge cut her off sharply. I suggest you remain silent. These documents indicate a pattern of fraud and harassment that could result in criminal charges. James slumped in his chair, his perfect image crumbling. Their lawyer frantically flipped through papers, trying to find a way to salvage the situation. Given this evidence, the judge continued, Mr. Harrison's petition for custody is denied. Furthermore, due to the documented financial fraud, Mrs. Chen is entitled to not only her portion of the marital assets, but also punitive damages. Victoria stood up, her voice shrill. You can't, I'm not finished, the judge said firmly. The attempted coercion during labor raises serious concerns. I'm referring that matter to the district attorney's office for review. As we left the courthouse, I heard Victoria wailing about the family reputation. James was on his phone, probably trying to reach Olivia, who'd gone mysteriously unreachable since selling her story to the press. Michael wrapped his arm around me as we walked to the car, Sophie still sleeping soundly. You okay? He asked softly. I looked at our daughter, then at him, and smiled. Never better. That evening, as we celebrated at home with my parents and Diana, my phone buzzed with news alerts. The Harrison family's carefully crafted public image was unraveling. Their social circle was buzzing with whispers of other indiscretions, other covered-up scandals. Sometimes, Diana said, raising her glass, justice is its own revenge. I watched Michael giving Sophie her bedtime bottle, his face full of pure love and joy. The Harrisons had thought they were punishing me, forcing me to sign away my rights during the most vulnerable moment of my life. Instead, they'd given me the push I needed to find real happiness. You know, Michael said later, as we put Sophie to bed, I should thank James someday. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, he smiled, pulling me close. If he hadn't been in Bali with his girlfriend, you wouldn't have come to my office that day. We wouldn't have, Sophie. I kissed him softly. Some mistakes turn out to be blessings in disguise. The final news came a week later. Victoria had resigned from her hospital board positions. James had been asked to leave his firm, and their precious social standing was in tatters. But I didn't care anymore. I had everything I needed, a beautiful daughter, a man who loved us both, and the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting happy. As I watched Sophie grow, hitting each milestone surrounded by genuine love and joy, I knew we'd won something far more valuable than the Harrison name. We'd won our freedom, our happiness, and our chance at a real family, and that was worth more than all the Harrison millions combined. The end.